It's Melodic Investor. My name is Antoine, and I just want to come on and talk about tenant screening. So, for those of you who know, I have been in the industry for over 20 years uh, on the multifamily side and the commercial side, and now I strictly do commercial. So, what I want to talk about is tenant screening. What you should look for when screening a tenant. Please like and subscribe. I'm trying to grow the channel. Here's what I look for when I screen. One, I'm looking for evictions. Has this person had any evictions in the last 7 years? Now, some people will say if you've ever had an eviction, it's a non-starter. You won't even have it. And when you're just starting out, that's probably the way you want to go. And you need to be careful to make sure that you're not violating any landlord-tenant laws. So make sure that you know what those are before you start that, because the last thing you want is a fair housing lawsuit. Those can be very pricey, cost you a lot, and can give you a bad reputation. You don't want that. But you can check out bankruptcies or evictions. I'm sorry, not bankruptcies, evictions. If there's been an eviction, let me just tell you, it's very challenging because the person that has had the eviction knows their laws. They know their rights. So they got a leg up on you right out of the gate. Just know that. The other thing you want to look at is obviously its income. Some industry standards have it to where it's 2.5 to 3 times the amount of rent. However, since moving to Atlanta, I've heard that it's 5 times. I think that's a little atrocious, in my opinion. 2 to 2.5 is reasonable for me, but you need to find out what you're comfortable with and what works for you. That being said, I look at the gross. I don't look at the net. So I'll say 2.5 times the amount of rent. And if everything checks out, and that's everyone combined, total household income. So if it's a roommate situation, I look at all the roommates. If it's married, I look at all the incomes combined. Now, with that said, let's just say they have irregular incomes and things like nature. I still would count those. I look at those as well. Like your bartender or, hairdresser, barbers, things of that nature. Their income can go up and down depending on if they had a great month or not. So you want to average it out. So that's one way to look at that. Almost fell in this chair. What else? So income, evictions, those are things that are non-starters for me personally. Or not the income, but the income too, because you got to if you can't make the income, you'll probably struggle with the rent. Credit is important for sure. And some people make a threshold, whether it's can be below a certain amount or, obviously if it's above, then it's even better yet. Credit is, you just got to look at the report and see what it says and see why. I don't sweat medical. Most people have student loans. So those can factor in as well. And I just look at it case by case basis, but just to give an idea, if someone's chronically late for the same things, like if you see multiple phone bills on there and things of that nature, you definitely can ask, again, check your state and local laws. Nothing wrong with asking though, just to find out what's the story there. Some people, there might be a story that you just need to consider if you choose to. What else? Landlord references. Those are huge. I will always take what the previous landlord said and run with that. And that's going to be, in my opinion, that's going to carry the most weight. Because they're going to tell you how they experienced that person. And that's honestly the best way to avoid a train wreck. definitely look at, you know, the previous landlord, whether that be via email or a conversation. Questions that I asked, that I would ask, um, were they ever late? Did you almost take them to court? Did you ever take them to court? Um, if they were late, how many times were they late? Would you re-rent to this person? That can be a great one. Not everyone wants to get into that technicality or whatever for legal reasons. Totally understand that. Um, what else would I ask? Oh, how did they leave the unit? Was it in great condition? Did they get their security deposit back? Those are questions that will give you little indicators whether or not you want to move forward with the tenant or not. How did they take care of the place? You definitely want to know, because how they do one thing is how you do one thing is how you do everything. So definitely ask those questions and be prepared. And if you can, kind of write out your criteria and just kind of make sure it's in line with the state and local laws, just so you set an expectation. If you have a pet policy, find out what that is. If you have breed restrictions, find out what those are. Remember, when it comes to service animals, that's different from a pet. Service animal, how I look at service animals, is like a piece of medical equipment. Would you tell someone they couldn't have medical equipment? You wouldn't, okay? So anytime someone says a service animal and they have the proper supporting documentation and you can verify that, nothing you can do there. It's medical equipment. And just check with your home insurance to make sure you're covered. If in case they call them the aggressive breeds, your Rottweilers and Pit Bulls and things of that nature. You definitely want to look into that, make sure you're covered there, just on the off chance. Another thing that I would look at is obviously the application fee. You want to make sure you're charging enough. Most platforms that have already set up have a fee to where you don't pay anything, but the tenant pays. I've used a couple of them. I've used one site or onsite. Is it onsite? It's been so long since I used it. I've used them, and I've used apartments.com. I've used Zillow. I've used, those are really the main ones that I've used. Oh, and now I have Hemlane. It's just for smaller mom and pops. I guess they do bigger outfits as well, but I've definitely used those to screen applicants. What else would I take into consideration? That's kind of really all I could think of. And you know what? You know what's not a bad one either? Is like, not a character reference, but a letter of recommendation, if they have it. And particularly from their employer. If their employer is willing to vouch for the employee, that says a lot. And if they've been at their company more than a year, that's usually saying a lot. They're still stable. As far as work history, I like to say at least 2 years of work history. And I verify pay stubs. And I know there's a lot of scamming going out there with the pay stubs. One way you can do it is I look at the year to date and make sure the math checks out that way. The other thing I do is you can verify with the employer. That may be a fee that costs you with that. So just be careful there. And of course, if they're 1099, let's say they're self-employed, you can ask for their income tax, the 1099, and verify that they've had consistent income for the last 2 years. I think 2 years is a safe kind of minimum if you want to check back. And make sure they have consistent income for that amount of time. And if they're on a program where they're receiving a subsidy or rent discount or something like that, just make sure it covers whatever they have. Like if they're on Section 8 or housing, you want to make sure that their voucher covers at least the rent in case that they lose employment or something like that, which most of those programs do. But that's kind of in a snapshot of all of the critical things that I would think of if I was going to have a criteria for residency and screening. Hope that helps. All right, take care. Bye.